Today we'll be discussing the most effective reverse aging product on the market worldwide, called the Age Pill. Now let me introduce our guest speaker. It's not often that a social communication marketing company is headed by a genius biochemist whose 30-year mission and passion has been to bring safe and effective products to the marketplace, which enhance the lives of thousands worldwide. It's not often that a man has 400-plus patents on products or devices and has been awarded multiple Genius Awards for his work. Hundreds to thousands globally respect and appreciate our guest speaker today. It's my great honor to welcome you, Tom Mower, Sr., as our guest today.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and but also I'm a little bit embarrassed by it because the way that I see myself is I'm just a guy that has a lot of abilities and talents, God-given ones. I certainly give God credit for that, but I'm using those to the best of my ability with what I have. And fortunately for me, I have a great desire to help other people and to make their lives better. And so while I've done a lot within my lifetime, most of it has been, at first I started with some remarkable discoveries 30 years ago that were done created, found in science, but not brought to the marketplace. And I didn't understand all the reasons why then at that time, but basically big pharma and big medicine is the impeding factor, and I think most people in this call will understand why with that, because natural products aren't prescribed. And physicians and really even pharmacy, for whatever that's worth, but physicians really don't know much about it. They're not trained in it, so you can't fault them for what they don't know. They can only practice what they do know. But when it comes to nutritional science, if that's the right term for it, it goes beyond that. People call it natural medicine, alternative medicine. The FDA calls it complementary medicine. And I guess all of those things are sort of true with the things that are there, but there's such a diversity in so much that it really quite amazes me how many things are discovered and never brought to market because of some of these factors that I've talked about. The Age Pill is one that's really gives a tremendous opportunity because it has so many different configurations in it. It's not patentable, the ingredients in it, because they are naturally occurring ingredients, but they're extracts of those, and some of them are naturally combined, reacted enzymatically, nothing done synthetically with it. So therefore you don't have anything that you can patent to make a prescription drug in. And as most of you know, it costs around $1 billion, or sometimes higher, sometimes twice that, to get a new drug approval, and the average time is about 13 years. So in order for you have to look at big pharma this way. No matter how you feel about it one way or another, they're a business to make money, and everything they do is driven upon that. So if they have a product that really cures something, there's not much money in it because they keep losing their customer base. So most development now in pharmaceuticals is going into treating symptoms rather than going after the cause of it. Well, we want to go back even before that, and the Chinese had an ancient philosophy that they said the human body has the ability to live to a great length of life in very good health if you but remove the toxins and the waste and provide the types of nutrients that it needs to function at the highest level. Now, that was in the Yellow Emperor's book, and that was published about 5,000 years ago. So 3,000 years before Christ, if you can imagine. That knowledge was there, and some of the basic things, in fact, just one of them that's in the Age Pill, was part of a formulation that they have, and they had used. And I got onto that in the 1980s and saw studies that the Chinese were doing on it, and I wasn't making really dietary supplements at that time. Mostly it was personal care products and things, but it was so impressive that before people really went to China, a very hostile, undeveloped country at that time, I hired people, sent them into China that were Chinese, that were here, they knew the territory and they did it, and I flew in, and after some research and getting products and trying them and seeing, were the results self-evident, or is this a psychosomatic thing, which I really don't approve of with many of the products that are out. But if you can take a calcium supplement, I mean, you know, it's going to build strong bones, but you're not going to notice anything unless you get to the point where you start seeing improvement in your bones, or the density of them can be measured. But when you're talking about growing younger, it's really part of life stream. And the Chinese look at it this way, and I agree with them, is that they had a belief, they're called Taoism, and in Taoism they thought that it is possible for a person to live forever. And so that was their goal. Many of the things they tried actually killed people off early because they got into mercury and things like that. But many of the things extended the lifespan of them greatly. And in doing so, there was always this hope for the fountain of youth. And that fountain of youth goes way back. It goes back into, when they're talking about this magic elixir, this water, it was back into Chinese, India. Alexander the Great was searching for it in India, one of the things why he went there with it. So that dream has been there. And then they came to the Americas, and they thought that the fountain of youth was somewhere in Florida. And one guy, a Spaniard, went around and he drank out of streams all over until he drank from one that was contaminated and killed him. But they were looking for this magic bullet, if you will, that would be the fountain of youth, this elixir, this water, to where they could gain immortality. Well, of course, it was never found and thought to be only a myth, science fiction, fairy tale, all of those things. Medical school. Dr. David Sinclair made quite a remarkable discovery based upon discoveries that other people have made. Nobody generally creates anything just entirely on their own. It's a combination of what other people have done. And in that, he was a creator of resveratrol, and he found resveratrol in red wine. And the French, even though they smoked a lot, drank a lot, ate a lot of fatty foods, had less cardiovascular diseases. So they started to find out why. And they found out the molecule that was responsible for it in red wine was resveratrol. Now that's an incomplete description of it, because there were three other types of natural ingredients that worked with resveratrol on a gene that they didn't know existed before. And it was called sirtuin, or a SIRT1 gene. And that's what it worked on. But as people isolated, and resveratrol is the main one, they used it and they didn't have very good results. The reason why they weren't using the other three, because they have an agonistic response on the genes, where one is, they transfer energy, cell signaling, and when it's exhausted, one knocks another off, and then when it's exhausted, another knocks it off. So it goes through a cycle. That way it doesn't get used to it, or it gets tied up with a molecule like resveratrol. It's lost all of its energy. So they didn't necessarily realize that. I did, and when I saw the studies and things done, and Dr. David Sinclair went on, and resveratrol caught the imagination so much that GlaxoSmithKline went into Harvard Medical School and paid them $720 million for all the research they did, because it was put them way down the track to making a life extension drug. Because people taking these compounds, or animals that were taking them, were living longer, but then they were actually taking the combination of it. But when you isolated resveratrol and you put it into a product, then it was powerful for a little while, but then it started losing its punch. And it's just because it was spent, and the SIRT1 genes were tied up and bound with it. That gives you a basic idea. So here was $750 million spent by GlaxoSmithKline, and they couldn't make a synthetic molecule that they could patent that would do what resveratrol could do, plus the way that they, in broad terms, the body got used to it. And so as a consequence, all that money went down the drain. Not just $720 million, but all of the hundreds of millions of dollars they put in research to make this fountain of youth type molecule that they thought they may have had. Well, Dr. David Sinclair is a brilliant person, and he has a team, and of course he has the resources of the Harvard Medical School. And so he was very perplexed with that, because even though there was no financial penalty to him because they took their chance on it, there was almost $1 billion spent on this project, and he even had a piece of the pie in developing that. Part of that was given. They hired him. And so as a consequence, he went back to see why it wasn't working. And in the process of doing it, the total knowledge in biochemistry of the world doubles about every 5 years. So in the period of less than 15 years that he was working on it, it doubled 3 times. And they got to the point where here less than 10 years ago, about 6-7 years ago, they had discovered that they don't know a lot about the genes and the DNA, as perhaps many of you know. People that are not in this field are quite naive and think, oh yeah, we know, they mapped the human genome and all this, and they know all of those things. But they know a lot, but there's a lot that they don't. And they didn't realize that the key to virtual immortality lied in the fact of a couple of things. Back to the Chinese philosophy, remove the toxins and the waste and give it the powerful types of nutrients it needs to function, and the cell can live to a very long time. So as they took a look at this, and Dr. Sinclair did, he found out that they now could look at within the very cell itself and do very detailed analysis and microscopic observations of the functionality that was going on within the stem cell itself. And the stem cells, and I won't go through stem cells because I think everybody pretty well understands that's on this call, but stem cells, like chicken lays an egg, and eggs get consumed. And so if you're in the egg business, you have chickens laying eggs, and as they get older, they lay less eggs. And so if you're making less eggs than what the market demands for, then you starts to degenerate. That's degeneration. So aging is not a disease. FDA says it's not, and so does every other Ministry of Health I know of in the world. They say nobody dies of old age. They may die of a disease or some condition that's incident to their age, but really aging is only decay and degeneration. So this is where the philosophy has come in, and we've expanded greatly on that, because we looked at this and we've decided that, okay, let's address all of the factors that are there. It reminded me of kind of how they found a vaccine for rabies, and rabies, of course, the incurable disease once you got it to this point. And a team of doctors took a look at it and they said, well, we're trying to kill rabies and working on it, but maybe we need to look at the individual components of what the rabies is doing to the body. And so they did, and they took somebody who was terminal with rabies in an advanced stage of that, and they treated every single system that went down as the best they could with the ways they could, and this person survived, came back, became normal. It was the first survivor of rabies, and I guess in the history of the world. But all they did was take the individual components of what was happening and addressed each one of them, each as they occurred, and then so the total of that is they were able to treat all of those conditions. And now a person, if they get rabies, they can, if they can get to a doctor that knows it, because it's not widespread like a lot of other things are, but the science is there. If you got rabies, you can be cured because they know how to treat all the different facets of what rabies does. Well, if aging is decay, in other words, systems you have are rusting, metabolic oxidation in the mitochondria is the very worst case of it, because it's like a car engine. Car engine takes in an energy source, gasoline, and oxygen. It ignites it with a spark and creates energy, and out the exhaust pipe goes the toxins. Well, our mitochondria is the same. Takes in oxygen, takes in its energy source, that happens to be glucose. It ignites it with a spark. It's on a microscopic cell. It releases the energy. So what happens to the toxins and waste? There isn't a tailpipe, sort of. it goes out into the cells because the cells are just full of thousands of mitochondria producing energy. And so with that, it has this big morass of cytoplasm to go through, and a lot of it gets bound to other compounds because remember, when you oxygen wants to pair, and when you split oxygen with you do when you create energy from gasoline or from glucose, you split the oxygen, and when you do that, it wants to bond to something, it wants to pair, so it oxidizes something. Now our bodies produce antioxidants, and within milliseconds it will neutralize a free radical, but those levels go down, and a certain amount of them get through, and a number of them start to bind into other compounds which are toxic. And most of this goes back into the free radical theory, which is much more than a theory now, pretty well accepted. But as these toxins build up within the cytoplasm of the cell, even in the nucleus of the cell where the activity is taking place, everything starts to decay and be destroyed. So what they found that they could do now is they could look at every single component within the stem cell itself, the chicken that lays the eggs. And if a chicken gets older, it can't lay as many eggs. And if you want to, and it's just like within your body, if it's decay and degeneration, what happens is the biological systems within the organs and the systems itself, of course, are in decay. But it all goes back to the stem cells. The mother cell, it produces all of the cells that make up our body that are in a state of use, and then as they get worn out and exhausted, they're replaced. Like a skin cell can be replaced in as early as 20 days when you're younger. When you get older, it can go, it can go 4 or 5 months. So, that's one of the reasons skin deteriorates, but it's so protective, and it has to make those cells so fast. But when you're losing more cells than you're degenerating. And when you're decaying, the systems that you have that are functioning are being damaged, and so they go down too. And then you get to a certain point of your life as this degeneration starts to accumulate. It's like going up on a roller coaster, and you get clear to the top, and wow, you're at the top, you're 25 years old, and then you start down. First you don't go that so fast, and the further you fall, the faster you go. Well, that's the way it is with aging. It's not a straight line, it's not a flat or a line that's slowly but steadily declining. It actually compounds upon itself, and about every 10 years you age by about 0.4 of days, faster than you would when you're 25 or so with it. And so, in other words, between 25 and 30, you're aging at about 1.4 days for every day you live. So we don't see so much change. But you go from 35 to 45, now you put 0.4 on top of that, and you're aging at about 1.8 days. And that's if everything's good in your diet, see? But if you're into things where you have a more toxic environment and that, you could be aging 2 days for every day that you live. And so crank another 10 years on that, and now you're about 2.5 days, and put another 10 years on that. And where are we sitting? We're sitting about 65, and you're aging 3 days for every day that you live. And so that's a hard thing to do. But as the systems start going down, you realize that you've lost so much so much mass, and depending on the size of the person, but when you're, of course, conception, there's one cell. By the time you're born, there's about 10 trillion. And by the time you're an adult, depending on man or woman or size, you can be somewhere maybe, I don't know, in the vicinity of 70, 80 trillion to 100 trillion cells. And this is where you peak. But then if you start losing about 8 to 10% of those every 10 years, and it keeps compounding upon itself, the health is declining, this is what causes aging. So if that's the cause of aging, and it's not a disease that kicks in like a cancer or stroke or diabetes or things such of that. If it's not a disease, then it's a condition, and conditions can be treated. And that's what the age pill comes around and does. So we take a look at the functionality of the cells and the science that's been done, and we realize if you can put lots of energy into the cell, it's going to become much healthier because energy levels go way, way down. And by the time that you're close to 60, you're probably functioning at somewhere around 60 to 70% of where you were, and that's a lot of loss. And then when you get down into your 70s, it drops even faster, and you could be only functioning at 30 to 40% of where you were. So what's happened? Degeneration, decay. So now we have a scenario here for which the science didn't even know that it existed or what caused it or what was there. But now we know all of that, and now we're finding the compounds that actually can treat those symptoms, and we have to treat it as a whole, not as an individual. The one that Dr. Sinclair brought out was he actually extracted a product called NAD+. And the plus is for electron, and the cells produce that. But a lot of plants have it, but you have to eat a heck of a lot of avocados or broccoli or spinach or things like that to get substantial amounts in your body. But what they did is they extracted it, put it in the water of mice, and within just a number of months, mice only live 2 years, but they took it and put it in, and within the mice that were right ready to die, within 3 or 4 months, were still alive, and they'd become indistinguishable in size, function, look from young mice, where they were very old before, fatigued, and brain size shrunk, and muscle size shrunk, and gray hair, and poor leather, and poor eyesight, and poor hearing, and poor sense of smell, and all that returned to when they were younger. And they did in a very short period of time. Of course, they have a shorter lifespan for the mouse. So they progressed on, found it's doing it in every animal species, including man. So now we have found the key that NAD, if you can increase it, produces much more cellular energy. And now new studies are coming out which are really quite remarkable on cancers, and they're finding out things that they can do if they can create the energetics of the cells themselves, the healthy cells. It's not going to do anything for cancer, but it'll bring the other system up so fast that many cancers are going into remission now. And I'm not talking about their age pill. I'm just talking about energetics within the cell. So it's because I daresn't go into that area of cancer. But the energetics that they can increase the cell can be so much that terminal stage 4 cancers are being cured because of increase in energetics of healthy cells to where they fight the cancer and they can identify it better with what they're doing. Now there's a whole other world out there in cancers and new things that are happening and done, and I think we're to the point, if science could realize it, which I guess science realizes it, but big pharma, big medicine, and big government won't allow it. But I think we're to the point now, if we can think of a creative way of doing it, that really could end cancer with most people. If you catch it, before it was right down the last few weeks or months or so, you could probably save most people, I believe, in my opinion. But let's throw that out for right now. That's not what this discussion's about. So now we take a look at the stem cell, and if NAD creates energy, how does it do that? Well, it produces, the more NAD plus you have, it transfers that electron, makes ATP, which is the energy molecule, they say, of the body, and people think that's where it ends. No, it doesn't end there. All this goes through the Krebs cycle, which many of you are probably familiar with. There's about 30 steps in the Krebs cycle, and there's different things you can do to interrupt it in certain places and get some types of effects because of doing that. You can actually interrupt in one place and trigger small compounds made so it doesn't store fat, which is interesting thing, but that's for another discussion too. But in the Krebs cycle, with one of these stages, when you get to ATP, you're getting to the end of it, where it's at, and that energy is all that is that's energy that came down to Earth in the sun in solar radiation. It was hydrogen. hydrogen with a positive charge. And when plants convert it, they convert it into a chemical energy. But just like Einstein said, that you can never destroy or lose energy. You can only change it in form, but the power is always there. And so, that's true. So here you have solar radiation from the sun, and no life on Earth would exist without the sun. We know that. And so then plants change it to chemical energy and then it gets changed to another chemistry, but it's all chemical energy, and it goes throughout the plants, and it goes throughout the animal through the food chain and to us when we get it. And so then it goes into a variety of things where this chemical energy does a variety of things within our body. I'm just generalizing here for you. But then out of that, you get into where we're the body electric. Everything that we have runs on electricity, and our brain is a major one that uses most of that electricity throughout in the neurological system. As a consequence, the brain, even though it weighs only a little over 1% of your body weight, to maybe 1.5%, is using up 20-25% of your oxygen. And of course, when you use that much, it means there's so much activity going on, but it also means a lot of oxidative damage. And the brain, you have the blood-brain barrier and things like that, so it can be impeded. So that's one of the reasons that everyone's going to get dementia in their lifetime, I think, because of, and about half people get Alzheimer's. Just because of the excessive oxidation that goes on with the brain for the metabolism to keep up all the calculations that it's doing. And in fact, as your brain right now is doing more calculations than if you linked 100 of the very largest, most powerful supercomputers in the world together in a chain, doesn't equal a brain, the calculations that's going on in your brain, although, they're 99+% subconscious, but that's how powerful the brain is and what it's doing. And it's also very delicate. So it starts oxidizing, wearing out, just like a penny will tarnish, just like steel will rust, with all those types of things. So, but that's only one system. And it happens everywhere. And so what keeps it going? Well, the thing is, the Chinese are right. The body has the ability to repair, to regenerate, to maintain itself, and to live to a great length of life if you remove the toxins and the waste and get rid of them and give it the powerful nutrients it needs that are specific to whatever task that you want it to perform. So that's where a lot of Chinese medicine comes in. And in China, traditionally, you paid your doctor when you were healthy. And if you became sick, you stopped paying your doctor because he wasn't doing his job. That's an interesting philosophy, isn't it? But it also shows how confident they were and how they knew they could test with, not with the way we do it in our laboratories and things like that, but they could, through a number of things they had learned, like they take a pulse in 26 different places with 3 fingers and follow a meridian. And that's just trivia knowledge, but they were very complex in what they're doing and observing, and everything was done from observation, from cause and effect. And so they knew this could be happening. And a couple of the renowned Chinese herbalists, physicians, they were the same, that were from the emperors of China, lived almost 250 years. One of them died I've got his picture, and he died in 1939. And we have a picture of him at 246 years old. He looks like he's 246, but my God, think of that. He's living 3 times the average lifespan with it. And in Chinese records, they celebrated his 150-year birthday. And, well, he went on and lived 100 years over that. So our bodies have really got a remarkable ability to do that. So as we go on, we take a look at this now, and now that the science is there, we know the damage that's being done. What is the decay? Where's the decay? Where are the toxins? What's happened to the different systems? What's been damaged, destroyed, shut down? And we find that, of course, it all goes back to the stem cells. And stem cells, they have telomeres on it. Those telomeres aren't on regular cells, they're on the tips of the chromosomes. And so when it's time to duplicate, you release some telomeres, and the cells do. And then from that, they weave a new cell, X and Y chromosomes. And then it separates and goes off, and it's one of those expendable cells. Some of them will last in the body for 3-5 years. Some of them are gone in 20 days, and most of them somewhere in between there. But the point of it is they're all in a pattern of limited lifetime, and so the stem cell has to keep producing cells all of the time. And so as a result, stem cells wear out, and then they become dormant, and then sometimes they die with that type of thing, and all that is degeneration, see? Now, the conditions within the stem cells are rusting, oxidizing, decaying, structures are being damaged, but also in the process of oxidizing glucose, it's oxidized, and you leave a glucose oxide, and that is actually like plaque or tartar on your teeth, and it starts coating the protein structures within it. It bonds to them just like a plaque bonds to your calcium on your teeth, and it's the same principle. And what it does is it starts shutting off the metabolic process. It's sort of like suffocating them with saran wrap, if you want to think of it in a practical term, like that. So now you have things being filmed. Now you have everything goes into a stem cell to make a new stem cell, and other cells that go out and make other types of things, hormones and bone and whatever it is, but everything goes in to construct whatever molecules or cells that they're creating. Not all of it's used, and a lot of it is a metabolic waste. And of course, as everything gets corroded, and if you have a lifetime of metabolic waste, a certain amount of it doesn't get discarded, and it builds up and it accumulates and becomes cellular garbage. It's like very sludgy oil because you haven't been changing it within your car engine, and eventually it's going to damage it and destroy it and be gone. So that happens within all the stem cells because stem cells are sort of immortal, good until gone. In fact, it's like a cancer cell. It's immortal. It'll live forever. Put it in a petri dish. And you could, if you gave it everything it needed to live, 100,000 years, it'd still be going, because they're immortal. So if a cancer cell is a regular cell gone awry, a stem cell, if you will, then and it can be immortal. How about if we can keep it in good shape and have it functioning the way it's supposed to be? Could it also become immortal if it wasn't a cancer cell? That's really the theory that we're talking about. It's very plausible and feasible, and now many of the people around the world, it's not widespread, but if you know Aubrey de Grey, and brilliant person, he's a leading expert in this type of thing, and I watched a presentation on him just the other day, and Aubrey was saying that they asked him, well, the average lifespan in 1840 was 46 years, and they said in 1840, and then it jumped up after the turn of the century. It was up into about 60 years. I can't remember the exact date, and they said now it's 78 years. And so with society being so large and resources being so taxed and so many pollutants and toxins in our environment, how is it that people are living from 40, or they used to die at 46 years, and they're living to be 78 now on average? Is it because we have become so much more skilled, that we have better nutrients and things like that? And so Aubrey de Grey walked into, and this is the film, walked into he's English, and so he walked into this old graveyard, and he went back to people that were dying in the 1800s that had their headstone there. And he said, look, these kids died when they were less than 2 years. Here's some teenagers that died. Here's somebody that's 20. Here's somebody that's 25, a mother, and a couple of children. And he said, really what happens is that the average age used to be about 46, and it's because we had so many incurable diseases that we couldn't handle. And about 1 in every 7 mothers and babies died at childbirth. So as a consequence, it brought down the average age. So there's a misconception there. So if you think that 78 is because we're living longer, it's not. He said, actually, if you're over the age of 40, your average lifespan has come down in about 10 years, if you go back and you do analysis on that. And it's because of the poor nutrition and the toxins and all of those things that build up. I'm probably going on too long with this presentation, so I'll try and bring it to a head here pretty quick. But I wanted to preface all of this so you had a more thorough understanding about what we're talking about. So anyway, Aubrey Gray says, no, we're living, if you're over 40, you've lost 10 years of lifespan from what people in the 1840s had at that time. Now that it gives you a whole different concept on what's there. So they said, well, now with all these new discoveries in the anti-aging, and a lot of you remember this is when free radicals first become identified, and antioxidants and that. And they were talking about that, and they said, with that, and he said, science is far beyond that. Now we have enough things that he said we can really change the lifespan. I said, well, what do you think the potential is for the human being to live now? Because there are barriers. There's called an M1 barrier. It means the cells can only replicate a certain number of times they run out of telomeres. And if everything is perfect, that's about 150. That's called the M1 barrier. And how you go through that? Well, this Chinese guy went through it. A couple of them did. And they were 100 years over that. So obviously there's a way to get through it. And Aubrey Gray knows that. And he said, no, it's not talking about what's the maximum lifespan. He said, we're talking about immortality. He said, babies that are born today, with the advances we have in science, are going to probably live to be 200 to 400 years. But within their lifespan, probably discoveries will be made that could lead us to true immortality, unless you had some sort of a disease that you caught, like a typhoid or malaria, some type of thing that could kill that, or a car accident, did something. Other than that, he says, we're on the road to immortality now. There is no limit. Now, I believe in God, and I believe His purposes, and I don't know what all these things are in some ways, but I do have faith in God, and I know He knows, and this thing will come out. We're not going to have everybody on earth living to immortality, or we don't have enough room for us all. But that's probably the day the earth will come to an end. But that's just my philosophy. But the reality is that aging is now not just something that people work on to keep you from aging so quickly. It's now a science, and the science is now not anti-aging, it's youth regeneration. And so how do we attain that? We have to do it by going into the stem cell, and we have to fixing that which is wrong, just like with rabies. So if we take a look at the filming, that's the first thing. It's called glycation. And so these end products that build up in glycation are filming everything. Well, there's compounds now that science has found that can go within any cell, including the stem cells, but which is the most important, because that's where glycation impedes their ability to do it. And you can actually break down that glycation with these certain nutrients, because within the stem cell there is the mechanism to do it, and they are doing it, but you need a lot of the super nutrients there in the right blends, in the right concentration, to remove the plaque, the tartar, the glycation. And so that's the first thing we did. We thought, if we're going to create energy in a cell and get it to regenerate like crazy, you don't want it impeded and suffocated with this plaque from glycation that's coating everything. So we put compounds in this formulation. So this goes far beyond anything that Dr. Sinclair or anyone else has done. So we put those in to remove that. Then the second thing we have to look at is cellular garbage, the sludge that builds up. It's called lipofuscin. And so the lipofuscin it contains the toxins and the free radicals and the oxidizers and all of those things, toxic heavy metals. And it builds up. And one of the problems is it becomes large macromolecules. And the stem cells, just as any cell has portals or pores where they can excrete and discharge waste. But when the molecules get so big and they're not there and the enzymes that break it down are not plentiful enough, or not, you don't have necessarily enough of it, especially of the right kinds, that can break it large macromolecules down into micromolecules so they're small enough to be absorbed, then you build up all the cellular waste. And what happens with the stem cell, it looks like an egg. It's round. It has a nucleus, which is round. So you have cytoplasm and nucleus. And the egg, you have the white and you have the yolk. It's the same thing. But with stem cell, when it gets old, it actually becomes like you take a piece of paper and you just crinkle it up, wad it up before you throw it away. And it's all distorted, including the nucleus is with it. And that's an old stem cell and become dormant, die, or they greatly slow down. And you become less of you because you're now losing probably 80 or 100 cells more every single day than what is being replaced, and over a period of your lifetime, you waste away. And so now we go into this lipofusion, and we found the variety of ingredients that science has found, and we have put them together, and individually they have been proved, but collectively in our formulation, it hasn't been tested, but according to Shea, you can look at all the ingredients and see what they're doing, and I'm starting to post things like that right now, and you can knit together or put your puzzle together from the pieces that are there and make your own conclusion. That's why it's called the Dietary Supplemental Health Education Act. That's the best they could do, but they did it when Big Pharma was trying to get all nutrients that had to be prescribed, and they had to be you had to buy them from a pharmacy and through a doctor. And that was a crushing thing, but in 1994, the biggest outcry in the history of any piece of legislation went before Congress because of what they were trying to do, and DeShay was developed. So that's a great compromise because it allows you to make your own conclusions. You can read individual studies, you can read articles, all of that, and then you can make your conclusion of what's there. That's what we do, and that's how we conclude the ingredients that we're going to put together in what types, what ratios, what systems, what amounts, what interaction they have to make the formula. So in doing so, we have put together the formulation based upon ingredients individually that break down lipofusion, increase enzymes of all different types, especially the specific ones that break down macromolecules. And in addition to that, the pores are openings, and you can only put certain size particles in it. So there's also some compounds they found that can dilate the pores so they can excrete more waste. And literally, we believe from the studies we've seen with the different ingredients, and some even in combinations together with studies, that you can dilate the pores, you can break down the sludge into where it's flowable, and it flows out and cleans the cell out. So now if we've removed the plaque and we've removed the sludge, what can we do? Well, they found out that the mitochondria, which are the energy engines, are just plain wearing out, but they have their own DNA. Where you have 23 pairs within your system, there's 12 in mitochondria. And they're unique to mitochondria, even though they're part of the other. But it gives the mitochondria the ability to repair itself and to regenerate much more new mitochondria, more energy engines throughout the body. And when that happens, you can create energy a lot. And so we found the compounds that can do that kind of thing. And some of these came from NAD. They're all based on NAD now. We're talking about energizing the body so it can function. And they found within the stem cell, it can also has the ability to repair itself. And then it also has the ability to take sluggish stem cells and return them to where even these old cells were crinkled up, start to regenerate. And just like the mice did, they become indistinguishable from young stem cells in older people. And it's people. Human studies are done on this now, as well as animal studies with it. So now you can take an old stem cell, you can make it indistinguishable in size, look, and function from a young stem cell. And then when stem cells die off, the stem cells have the unique ability to create more new stem cells. And there's also a ability they have within the system, not just to replace, to create new stem cells to replace the ones that have died off. They can cause the ones that are sick to die off and to create more new ones. This is quite complex. And then in places where they've had a certain limited factor of stem cells that are produced, you can increase that so you can produce more stem cells. So now you get all stem cell activity going, and then the oxidative damage within the mitochondria and within the stem cell itself and within the nucleus they found it has the ability to repair those surfaces, the DNA, the mutagenic damage that has occurred, to where it becomes whole again. And so as a consequence, now you can, the stem cell, with the right supernutrients, the blends of them in the right concentrations, can now go and actually rebuild the stem cell itself. So now you have a clean stem cell. Everything is repairing, regenerating. Huge amounts of energy now can be produced. And that ATP molecule that we're talking about, the more NAD you make, the more ATP you make, but it goes on. And from ATP, it actually, in this Krebs cycle, it's a couple steps away, it converts back to hydrogen. Yeah, the very hydrogen that came from the sun. So it's coming out of its chemical stage and goes back into like solar radiation, the hydrogen component of it. So now it's gone through the whole system, and now it comes back to hydrogen. And that hydrogen, we call it biological hydrogen, because with that, it creates biological activity that generates electricity. So now it's become electricity. That which was sent from the sun was been converted from solar energy to chemical energy and many different types, comes back to hydrogen and then creates the electrical energy that runs you and makes everything repair. So much so, we're going to be doing some photography here pretty quick and doing things. Even you can rub, and we've got some people just starting to do that. We give suggestion, and they're seeing stunning results overnight. That they take a capsule and they mix it with some of their skin lotion that we recommend. We don't recommend most because they're filming or they're full of toxins, but with ours, they're so biologically active. Rub it on the skin overnight, and you wake up in the morning, your skin has been so energized, it just shocks you in one day and gets better and better. So we have all of that we put together within these stem cells to do that. So now, what can you do? We've ended decay, haven't we? And so now we are regenerating more cells than what you are losing. So instead of that roller coaster ride you're going down, it starts turning up, and you start gaining altitude. You start going back to where you were. So now we're not talking about anti-aging. Yeah, that's a factor in this thing. With it, it's one of the nails that is holding up the structure. But in reality, we're regenerating youth. We're creating the biological indicators they're finding that all the animals are testing. You have a number of biological indicators, and that's common. You know that with many, and for many different things. But the biological indicators of youth are regenerated, to where even in older people, they regenerate back to where they were functioning at levels they were functioning at when they were in their 20s. And some that might be younger, you might even get into the teens. And so what you've done is now you're increasing your stem cells, and soon you'll see muscle size, definition, facial structure will even change. Eyesight will, all these things I've had. My eyesight, I used to wear glasses. I don't even wear glasses. Now it's 20/70, now I'm 20/20 with it. My hearing was getting fairly bad. I bought a pair of hearing aids, only kept those for 2 months, but it was just right in the intermittent time that I was developing this formula. So for $4,000, I got some expensive memorabilia in a box here. They're called hearing aids. I don't need them anymore. So my hearing's back, my eyesight's back, and I'm feeling enormous strength and vitality and all of those things, and I can see muscle size, definition, all of that coming back. My hair color is coming back. My skin has become incredibly soft and young, and being a guy, I'm not so much into skin, but it's pretty darn nice, and I've never had anybody comment on how nice my skin is. Not so many guys do it. Some do, but women really notice it, and I hear it all the time. So what is this we're talking about? We're talking about self-evident results based upon a complex formulation of natural ingredients that are all scientifically proven, put together in systems together, so we treat the whole condition of aging as a condition, not as a disease, and so it's treatable with these, and what we have is, voila, we have new young stem cells everywhere, more of them, fully functional, and you're producing, or close to fully functional. I can't make an absolute statement, but with that, they're operating like you're in your 20s again, And every day, instead of waking up 2 or 3 days older, you wake up and you are younger, and you feel it within a week or two. And if you don't even feel it, Dr. David Sinclair says this: some people won't feel much with what it is, but there's one thing about it they need to understand: it is working. And what he means by that, it's utterly impossible for it not to work. So most people will feel something. I did. It surprised me because I'm quite analytical, and there's no placebo effect to me. When I felt within a week the changes, I knew that they weren't psychosomatic with me. They were real changes. And then it started coming in from all kinds of people. And now we've got photos of face and skin and hair and all kinds of serious problems that people have that are age-related because of the condition of that aging is degenerating their body to where the disease that kicks in that can damage their health, age them, and eventually kill you happens. But if you can take it back to full regeneration, just like we talked about, this is in theory now, and this is my supposition, just like they're doing with cancer, where they energize the cells, and without doing anything else, the body becomes so active with their own natural abilities fighting cancer. It's killing cancers just by energizing cells. So I'm not going to go into it. I'm only using that as a comparison of what really can happen. And so the mysteries of the stem cell, much has yet to be learned, but we know enough now to be a potent force in not ending aging. That we're doing. This is the death of aging. And what we're doing is actually creating youth. So the age pill is really the instrument of the death of aging, and it's also the vehicle for the regeneration of youth, of the you that you once were and want to be again. That's all found within our product. Well, I've gone on, you see, quite fast. And these are not notes. These are just coming out of my own, my head, my thoughts from what I know. But I really know a lot about this with it. And Dr. Sinclair just said on an interview I saw he did the other day, he says, yeah, the ingredients that, like NR, which is the one that, there's a couple come, it's Procter & Gamble's bought it, and they're charging an absurd rate because it'll increase a couple of molecules, NMM and then N80+. But there are ways you can make the cell produce it, and you can produce 3 or 4 times more because so much of NR is lost within the digestive tract and through the liver. And there's ways to produce huge amounts of it, much more of this other. NR itself only increases energetic, which is significant, but you can increase a lot more energetics than that. You can actually recycle spent NAD and recharge it with another electron, and you can do it 2 to 3 times beyond the first time. So what does that do? That means you have more higher level sustainable energy, regeneratable energy that keeps occurring, and this formulation is designed to provide all of those things so that it can happen. Now, I know this is a lot to absorb, and I've gone on for almost an hour on this, but you're professional people, and I wanted to give you my spin on it so you could understand the logic and the reason. This isn't a hocus-pocus magic molecule. This is a miracle molecule. This is the fountain of youth, but it's not a mythical water. It's a real molecule or formulation of molecules that regenerate youth and, in theory, are now leading us very close to immortality, I believe. We'll find other things. Dr. Sinclair just said he found a compound that's over 1,000 times more potent than NR. Well, we're beyond NR already. I don't know what the one is he's found, but you can bet your bippy, these scientists, they have to publish. That's how they get their credentials and everything else. So the minute they publish, we read, and then we go after it. So we have an evolving formulation of what we're doing. We've changed it 2 or 3 times, so we've been able to make ingredients that weren't available in the marketplace that are found to be used and add them to our formulation. So this is one that is a magnificent product. This is the single greatest discovery in the history of human health. In our business of direct selling or network marketing, professional selling, we've got a lot of doctors. In fact, we've got some big stem cell clinics now that are coming on wanting to run this through it, because with what they're doing with stem cells where they implant them, this makes them so much more active in the other cells around them that they're having remarkable results with it. And some of the orders that are coming in from some of these now are actually earth-shaking. They're so large with what they're putting out through clinics. So here we've got the real thing here. This isn't take it and we hope you feel better. This is taken and we know that, as Dr. Sinclair said, it's impossible for it not to work. I believe that. I can't say that absolutely, but I can say I believe it from what I see, and that's the type of formula we have. So now you have this at your hands. You have really no competition out there that can do it. The price is so economical because I have this huge manufacturing plant, and my business is in the business of helping people. Now, I know that's an easy thing to say, and you can be, people want to be philanthropic or seen to be that. I am that way. I'm not. The money isn't a factor with me, and this at all. And in fact, I sold my previous company out for that I had because of a divorce, and I got $300 some million out of it. So you get $300 million, and they offered me a $50, $60, $70 million signing bonus if I wouldn't compete, but I wouldn't take that. And so I said I won't do it because the knowledge I have I want to pass on to people. The God-given gifts and all the resources I have, I want to utilize to help people to make their lives healthier and, of course, much more wealthy and happier. And that's the mission that I'm on to do it. That's my reward. That's my pay. So I'm the hardest worker in Sizzle. I can tell you that. Now, there might be some distributors who could say that. I don't know their pet, but here in my staff throughout the world, I put the most hours in. I do the most. I'm working here a lot of times. I'm single, so I work here holidays and weekends often and things like this. And because why? So I make more money? No, because I can make more good things happen for other people. So that's my dedication. With that, I'm going to bring it to an end, and I want to thank all of you that took the time out of your day to listen to it. And I hope that your belief factor is enough that you will try it. If you try it, that will change from belief to knowledge, and when it's there, it's indisputable, and the results are too with this. So I'm glad I was on the call. Hope I'll be back again with but this was a very informative call, probably the most technically, I mean, I can get much deeper than this, of course, but I just want to put it in terms. You don't need to know the minutiae of how some of the things work, but the concepts and the things that are done, you've got that now. I'm printing things. I'm publishing all the time on Facebook. I have a Did You Know series that I publish about an ingredient. About every day I do one, and I'm going to go through the whole formula. Then when it's done, I'm going to bring all those together, because I'm trying to inform the general public too, and then I'm going to put all of the references to it so they can go and they can see exactly the articles of the scientific studies. It will be a real piece of work, but, I mean, what are we talking about here, folks? We're talking about immortality. We're talking about regeneration of youth. We're not talking about slowing down or fighting the aging process. So we're saying we're killing aging. This is the instrument of death. That's what the age pill is, and it's the death of aging and the rebirth and the regeneration of youth, and that's what the age pill offers. Now, if you put TS6 with it, you can rebuild those telomeres so they can just keep duplicating onto what we think is infinity. And so that's what cancer cells do. They duplicate so fast, but they rebuild telomeres just as fast as they're gone, and so that's why they keep growing with that. Well, we can do that in healthy cells now. So we've got all those things. So you have TSX for telomere rebuilding. You have the age pill for the stem cells. And what have you got? A newer, younger you every single day. So that's my message for today, and I thank you for it. And I'll turn the time back over to you.
Well, thanks, Tom. I really appreciate it. This is Dr. Bisnick. And, last week I went through some stem cell injection training, and they were talking about just what you were just saying, that if you could activate your stem cells within your body, those that have gone into senescence, if you can get your stem cells to multiply, when you go in, when we do finally go in and we have stem cell injections, and I'll guarantee that every single one of us on the call will do it because it's the future of medicine. But if you start taking the age pill now, it's going to make it so those injections will work even that much better. That's what these researchers are now saying. that's just so cool that we have this product. Thank you.
Welcome. And it does.
It really does. All right. Well, thanks, Tom. Thanks, everyone, for getting on the call today. And, we're not trying to say that we cure, treat, or we're not trying to imply that in any way. We're just saying that aging isn't a disease, and if we can attack it, if we can slow it down, if we can stop it, the possibilities of your life are just endless. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tom.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.